And welcome back to the Nose Plays Heroes Hour. Today we're going to be looking at a game that I've had my eye on for a while. I recently picked it up. I put a little over a dozen hours into this game at this point, and yeah, you should check it out. It's called Heroes Hour. We're going to do a quick first look and review of the game. I probably won't spend a ton of time going over mechanics, but I do want to point out some of the things that I find intriguing about this game and explain a little bit about how I found it and what it's all about. So, Heroes Hour is an interesting take on the 4X slash RTS genre that's been very popular over the last few years. It includes a lot of different games. The ones that come to mind are things like Total War, Civilization, Age of Wonders. If you're really into old school stuff, Masters of Magic. If you've played any of those types of games, you'll be pretty familiar with what the setting and general flow of this game is like and all about. It does some things that no other 4X that I've ever played has really done. I've heard that Heroes of Might and Magic had some similar mechanics to some of the stuff found in this game, but I haven't actually played a lot of Heroes of Might and Magic, so I don't recall that being the case. Either way, it does some things that I think are really clever and solve some of the big problems that 4X strategy games often have. And I say problems sort of tongue-in-cheek. It's not so much a problem, but a design choice. One of the big problems or design choices that has to be made with a game that is a 4X game is how do you handle combat and how do you make it efficient but fun? I really love Endless Legend. It's a great game. One of the things that it seriously got wrong or did not get executed as well as I'd hoped was the combat. The combat system in that game is okay. It's not great. It's not awful. But the one thing that it really inhibits in a game like that is the ability to play it in multiplayer. And that's because the combats can take a long time, or they can feel, if you set up the game in a way that makes them quick, you can feel like you don't really have any engagement in the combat, and you might as well just auto-resolve all of them, which is not great either. This game gets combat in a 4X game right, I think. There's a lot of cool stuff, but the combat in this game is very quick, it's very fast-paced, it's real-time, and it's awesome. And it's one of the things that attracted me to this game. So we're going to take a look at a few things. Let's go ahead and look at some of the options menus. You can see there's not a whole lot going on here. There's not a ton in the game because it is sort of an 8-bit style game, so you don't have a lot of graphical options or anything like that. And then all of your controls are here. I believe you can rebind these if you want, but there's really no need to. And we'll go ahead and get into a new game. Another thing that this game does really well is it gives you a lot of options. So I can open up this advanced tab and you can see there's a ton of options here where you can customize your experience. So if you like certain aspects of the game, you can keep them. If you don't like them, you can actually disable quite a few of the aspects of the game in this advanced menu, which is pretty neat. You can see there's a lot of different options here for how the map and the number of enemies is laid out. I believe you can have up to 7 or 8 enemies in any game, and then you can customize maps. So you can actually create maps. I haven't really figured out how to do much of that yet, but people can create maps. You can upload your maps and customize the experience a little bit more even. But the core gameplay is in a small game. Some of these smaller ones and some of these smaller ones, you can seriously, if you're playing quickly, get an entire game in under an hour. Now, that is a design choice. That means that a lot of the mechanics in this game are very simple, but they're still fun to execute, and I really, really enjoy it. So we're going to go ahead and start a game. I like to just play on random. It forces me to sort of experience new stuff. But actually, I will go ahead and show you a couple of things. So if you want, you can manually choose your faction. Um, there are currently, what is this, 9, 10, 11 factions. I believe a 12th one is incoming. They're currently working on an update. I'm not sure if it's going to be DLC or not. I can't remember. But a new faction is being added to the game in the near future. And each of these factions have some pretty unique mechanics that make them fun to play, not just aesthetically reskins of the same stuff, although there is some of that. But every faction has some unique stuff going on, unique buildings, unique hero powers. It's pretty cool. And you can look at all of this stuff. In fact, let's go back and I can show you. It's under the lexicon. You can get a good overview of the faction. And I can click on any of these other factions and we can learn about them here. So this is pretty cool. If you want to learn a little bit about a faction, go to the lexicon, look at all of this cool stuff, and it will sort of give you an outline of the explanation of how that faction is supposed to be used, all of the military units, what their stats are, what they upgrade into. It's just a really neat little cool page. I'm glad that they added this to the game. I think it might still be available once you're in-game so that you can actually do some research on your enemies. And then each faction comes with 2 types of heroes. And they have a unique ability or skill. And that ability or skill is applied to all of these heroes or all of these heroes. And then the rest of the hero tree is sort of randomized, or maybe not randomized, but each one has a slightly unique one from a pool of skills that everybody pulls from. So heroes can be rather unique in terms of how you want to build them. It's also a situation where you don't generally have enough skill points in the course of a game to pick every skill, so you sort of customize your hero to the way that you want them to fight based on what you have available to you. So you could play the same hero multiple times and play them differently depending on how you decide to go down the skill tree. But let's go ahead and just get in a game. I'm just going to go random, and I am going to go for a tiny duels. This is going to be a really small map, and we'll see if we can get through an entire game in about an hour. Alright, so if we take a look, it looks like we are playing the Lament. Do I have access? If I press escape, I do. I have access to the lexicon. So we can go ahead and click on the Lament. The main race of the Lament are troglodytes. These are kind of like lizard, sand, desert worm sort of people. We have some minotaurs. We have trogs. We have gorgons, troglodytes, watchers, tunnel riders, hydras, and some kind of a shadow mancer that turns into a monster. We ended up with a tunnel keeper. Their main ability is shadow cloning. So this creates temporary shadow clones of the hero and nearby allies. These shadows will fight with us, and they increase in strength as we level up that ability. So we get extra little temporary units. Okay, so the core gameplay loop of this is pretty cool. It takes a little getting used to as you start the game, but basically you start with one hero and you start with a city. The city can be developed at different levels depending on how you decide to start the game. So you can start with more buildings already built or less. Here is the tab that shows you all of the building planner or buildings that we can build. Any building that is in this light red can be built. Any building that's in this tan color can be upgraded, and then there's like a dark brown and a dark red, I believe, for your missing resources, either gold or some other resource to upgrade or build a building. One of the first things you want to do at the beginning of any game is go ahead and upgrade the building that lets you build more unit types. So right now the only building that we have that builds units is this one right here. We can build Trogzerkers, but we don't own any other buildings that build units. So if we buy this, we get a pick. We get to choose either the mutant Trog or the Gorgon. The Trog has a knockback and a leap attack, and we can have 8 of them, and you can see the stats up at the top there. And the Gorgon has a little bit different stats, and they have a petrification attack, which is pretty cool. They can petrify creatures. I'm going to go ahead and go with the Gorgon. Some of these choices are permanent and can't be switched. Other choices or other buildings allow you to swap between them. But you can only ever have one of the 2 units active at a time. So you can see that these are all brown now, the dark brown color. That means we can't build these. The reason for that is it's not that we can't afford them, it's that you're only allowed to build 1 building per day. So down here at the bottom of the screen, there's a little check mark. That shows that we have built a building this turn and we are not able to build another one. I'm going to go ahead and exit that, and we're going to click on this button down here. And this is the unit creation tab. This is where you can produce the units that you have constructed. And what happens is units are constructed on a weekly basis. So every week we'll have new recruits show up to our recruitment buildings, and once that happens, we can then hire them to fight for our army, and we can actually use them. Until then, they're just sort of sitting in this pool of resources that we can collect whenever we have the resources to do so. But you have a limited number of these, and they only replenish once a week. So right now, at this point in the game, every week we'll get 15 more of these guys and 8 more of these guys. We cannot get any more of these units for another week. There are some exceptions to that, but our barracks buildings that we've produced will not produce any more of these units for at least a week. We can click this button to just create the max, which is going to buy all of them. And you can see that those were immediately added to our army. So now we have 31 troglodytes, 8 gorgons. We started with 9 trogzerkers and our level 1 hero. We have no military units actually in the town other than the default garrison, which will always be in the town and cannot be removed from it. Okay, so that's basically town building. One of the neat things about this is that a lot of these buildings are the same for every faction. Every faction has some unique buildings and obviously unique units, but a lot of the other buildings are the same for every faction. So every faction, or most factions, have some form of the infirmary. Every faction has a mages guild. Every faction has a tavern. But the interesting thing is that the order in which you're able to build them, in which and where they become unlocked in this tree of things, varies slightly. And so there are some factions that can immediately get to their infirmary. Other factions can get to their mage guild really quickly. And so it does, even though the buildings are very similar between factions in many cases, it does make it so that it's a somewhat unique experience when you're playing them the first or second time. You do find out very quickly that some buildings are definitely more valuable than others. And as you level up your city by building more buildings, you'll get some unique bonuses that will unlock, which are cool. Just general bonuses that apply to your whole faction. And you'll unlock new buildings that can then be lead to other buildings. So we can't build an engineer's workshop till we have the infirmary. We can't build the infirmary till we have the monolith. You can see how that works. Pretty self-explanatory. This is definitely the best place to do your building. You can also do it from this screen, which is cool animation. There's some icons there that kind of tell you a little bit about the status of this. So that little red arrow, the blue arrow or the blue clock, those are all icons that mean something. They generally mean that they can be built, but you've already built this turn, so you can't build it right now. You have to wait. But that's pretty much the town building. Very simple. Okay, you can only do this once per turn. It's really important not to forget to do that. All right, the second thing you can do is you can move your hero around the map. Our hero has a limited amount of movement points. This green bar represents how much movement they have left. And there are various things you can do. So anything that you can mouse over on the map and interact with as your hero will give you a brief description. If you mouse over a tile and it turns your icon into a sword, that means that there will be a fight, and it will give you some indication of how difficult that fight might be with the current strength of your army. Keep in mind that that doesn't necessarily include things like spells or other abilities that you might be able to take advantage of during a fight. So it is possible to win some of these fights that say things like impossible or very hard, but it's generally not advised. If you want to have a successful run, the big thing that you have to understand is that this game is all about attrition in many ways, and so preserving your army is really important. Having your army units be able to fight multiple battles without dying and having to wait a week to replace them is really the key to being successful in this game. At the moment, our army's pretty small. We might be able to tackle this group of defenders that are defending a sawmill. And this sawmill gives us a little bit of extra wood resource every day. Wood is used to build certain things, mainly structures. Things like crystal, ore, mercury, all of those things are used throughout the game to either build units, do special effects in the game, or build building structures. You're going to need to collect those. Right now, it looks like this is undefended because when I mouse over it, there's no enemies there. There's no sword icon. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to check this obelisk first. And this gives me an unclear vision of where some secret treasure is hidden. If I collect enough of these obelisk stones, I can figure out where the treasure is and dig it up. And it's usually like a pretty powerful magical item. So it's usually worth trying to find if you can, but okay, the campfire basically gives us speed and a little bit more movement. And some gold, it looks like, as well. So our movement got increased by 4, so we still have 14 movement at this point, so that's cool. We can grab this crystal. We can grab this alchemy lab. Now our flag is red, and this is our alchemy lab. That means it's going to provide 1 mercury to us every day. There's a challenging fight down here with a magical item, and a hard fight over here with a magical item and some treasure chests. There's another camp over here and some free sulfur. So we can pick up this sulfur, pick up this wood, and maybe start heading over this way. Here's one of those shards. This gives us more clarity on where that treasure's hidden. What I'll probably do is sort of just loop around this way and look for free loot. We don't want to get in a fight just yet. There's a couple of buildings that we definitely want to have built before we start fighting. So I'm going to go ahead and end my turn. And you can see that the counter here has moved over 1 day. So every day, or every week, is made up of 7 days. At the end of the 7th day, you can recruit more military units. Our pools will replenish. So if we come back here, we can see we have 0 of 15 and 0 of 8. After 1 week, those numbers will go up by the quantity to the right. So this will be 8 of 8, and this will be 15 of 15. And we can get those in our army by paying the cost. Also, as I mentioned, you can switch between these. So if I click this button, I can always switch back and forth between these, but I can't have them both active on the same week. So you can only recruit one or the other in each week that you want to. Okay. So that was the first day. My hero has all of his movement back, and we can build a new building. So the buildings that I'm really interested in at the very beginning of the game are anything that's going to give us military units. So I want to get as many military units as I can in my army before we start fighting. The other building that I think is really important to pick up is whatever version of the infirmary you have. What this does is anytime that a unit dies in a battle, there's a chance that it will respawn in your main town. And you can then go back to the town and re-recruit it or add it to your army, which is pretty cool. All right, so let's go ahead and get the Mirror Lake. This is going to unlock these Nightmare units that we can add to our army. If we go back to the army unit creation page, you can see that now we have these Watcher units, and because we just constructed that building, we have 6 of 6. I can go ahead and pay for all 6 to be added, and now they're just in the garrison, but I do have the ability to move them here. If you move them here, this puts them as an army outside of the town, and we can move that army around. And so what we'll do is we'll move these guys over and combine them with our army. You'll also notice down at the bottom of the screen here, we have our main army with our hero designated as 1. Pushing the number 1 will automatically take us to that. The second army we have is just the 6 Watcher Regiment. Push 2, it'll take us to that. And then anytime we press F1, it'll take us directly back to our Mound of the Gods city. I'm planning on moving this army sort of in a loop this way. So we're going to go ahead and move these guys this direction. And as we do, I can actually... because I don't have a hero, I can't pick up this gold yet. But that's okay. We'll just move them right over here. And we'll recombine these armies in a second. Alright, that's the end of that. So that's 2 days down. And this can get quite quick. We can get very fast in the way that we do this. So let's go ahead and grab this obelisk. There's an impossible fight here at the Trog Hovel. We're not going to be able to get to that, but I can get to this, and this treasure chest gives us an option. We can take some gold or some experience. Leveling up your hero is one of the best ways to get a more powerful army. And it also gives me the opportunity to show you the skill tree. So, our hero has an attack of 3, our defense just went up by 1, we have knowledge of 1, spell power of 3, luck of 0, and morale of 0. All of these things you can mouse over and get a brief description of what they do and how they apply to your character. Then you have this skill tree, which is sort of triangular in shape. As you collect skills, you'll unlock ones further down the tree. Some of skills require you to have both the ones below it to upgrade or to get to higher levels. Or you can actually increase the power of skills that you already have unlocked in some cases. So we started with shadow cloning. This is one that makes little shadows for us. And offense, which increases units melee by 5%. Attack speed by 5%, sorry. And as they lose health, they gain extra movement speed and damage. This means that melee attackers are going to be really powerful in our army if we really level this up. We also have the option of getting warding, mastery, and this is actually not a bad one if you pick it up early in the game. So we'll just passively recruit new military units, approximately 14 per week. That can be a really cool way to replenish lost units and build your army, and the sooner you do that, the more weeks you get to take advantage of it. Toxicology just drops poison from the sky, and Devour allows us to basically destroy our own units to give permanent boosts to other units, specifically the hero in this case. Let's go ahead and go with this one, though. I want to get more units in our army. Alright, there's a camp right there. Get to this camp. Pick these guys up, and down here we can transition them into our army. And now we're getting to the point where these fights are looking a little bit more reasonable. I can pick up this ore. Any unit that's on the map like this has a zone around it where it defends one tile in all directions. And so if you move in any of the tiles directly adjacent to it, you'll start a fight. So we've got to be careful not to do that. There's some stuff up here, and I want to pick up this gold. So we'll move over here first. And then we're going to probably attack these guys and then go pick up this loot. We haven't done a building yet, so always check this before you end your turn. And we get to do another building. Now I can upgrade these units. These make our units a lot more powerful, but also much more expensive. We don't typically want to upgrade a lot of our units until we're in a place in the game where we can start to afford them. Slave pens is a cool building. This is going to increase our income by 100 each day, and it gives extra money for every non-lament creature that's in the garrison. There are a couple of ways to get non-lament creatures in the garrison, but 100 gold every day is not a bad thing. However, what I'm really interested in unlocking is the infirmary so that we can recover our units after combat. And in order to do that, we're going to need to build this monolith first. So I'm going to build that one first. That will unlock this building on our next turn. Alright. Now, before we fight this fight, we want to immediately come here and get the infirmary unlocked. And now this is actively going to replace our units. After combat, up to half of the dead will be sent back to the garrison and can be re-recruited or re-added to our army at a later time. And now we're ready for our first taste of combat. So we'll go ahead and engage. And this is one of the things that really attracted me to this game, is this combat system. So combat is real simple. You got this square map. There's a couple of little structures that are sort of randomly generated in the middle of the map. You can move your units around and combine them into different stacks, and then you just activate the combat, and they all spread out on the map and start attacking. You have limited control over them, but you do have control. You can send units in different directions: disengage, re-engage, attack, defend. Your hero also will engage in the combat, and your hero might have some active abilities or spells that they can activate during the fight. You can move them around as well. And when they get beaten, or when their health bar reaches 0, they don't die. They actually disengage from the fight and recover. And if the fight goes on long enough, they might be able to re-engage in the fight and help out some more. But heroes never actively die in the game unless they lose the entire combat. So you can have your hero engage, fight for a while, take some damage, fall back, recover, re-engage, fight for a while, take some damage, fall back, depending on how long the fight goes. Most of these fights are over in about 30 seconds. They do not last very long. Alright, so we can see that he has the bulk of his army down here. He's got 23 of these spawnling units, and then he has 9 cannoneers. These are ranged units, and there's some icons down here that will give you some information on what those units do. But we can move these units and try to engage from over here. And I think probably our best bet is just to try to overwhelm these guys. Your hero will take a lot of damage if they're the only unit that enemies can attack. So my strategy here is just going to be to kind of sweep up here, overrun these guys, take them out quickly, and then get to their cannoneers at the end of the battle. Also, our hero might have some spells that we can cast once the battle starts. And at any time, if you mouse to the bottom of the screen, you'll pause the game and give you an opportunity to cast spells. Spells often have some type of a cooldown, and you also have a mana pool that will allow you to cast other spells that will be on these slots as you collect them. Right now, this is the only one we have, and so I could create some shadow clones if I wanted to, but it's not one that allows me to target anything. It's just all the units around me, so I'm going to wait till my hero actually gets into melee combat to cast that. And in fact, we're going to grab them with an arrow and send them in. And right about now seems like a good time. So we have shadow units. Let's try to send these Gorgons in here and get in combat with these ranged units. Yeah. Easy peasy. Up here is the balance of power, so you can see they're quickly losing military units. We can see losses up here. And that's it. Combat's over. So very quick, very easy. We lost a couple of units, but we'll get some of these units back, and their entire army got wiped out. Gained some experience, which gives us a level. So we already picked up this. In order to pick up another level in this, we have to upgrade the previous tier. So we can't grab another point in this, but we could grab any of these other things. And I do like toxicology. Just sort of softens up units before the fight begins. And so we'll go ahead and take that. And that wood. We now have taken over the sawmill, which gives us a little bit of wood every day. And I have enough movement to get over here and grab the beginnings of these. And now we can see we already built our building at the beginning of the turn, so there's not much else for us to do. We're out of movement points. Time to end our turn. Alright, there's another easy fight over here that we're going to want to engage in. But before we do that, I have one troglodyte that made it back to the infirmary and is ready for fighting. So what we're going to do instead is I'm going to move to right here. I'm going to move the troglodyte out of the garrison, move him into the army, and then we're going to fight. And one of the things you find at the beginning of the game is that it's really important that you sort of stay near your town. As infirmary units stack up, you'll want to add those back to your army before fighting again. And if you get too far away from your town, that can be problematic. This is going to be another situation where we're just going to overrun them. And so the terrain's not quite as nice as before. They've also moved their ranged units a little bit closer. And since we have toxicology, we could almost just hang back here and let them come to us. And let the poison damage do its thing. So let's try that this time around. Yeah, see the poison's already acting on those guys. Alright, let's send our hero in here. You'll see, if we send our hero in by himself, he's going to take a lot of damage. And he might go down, which is perfectly fine. Nope, he actually was able to get into melee. A lot of ranged units have a big penalty once they're in melee. But you can see they took almost 2/3 of his health. So sending your hero in by himself can usually be pretty dangerous and get them knocked out of the fight pretty quickly. Alright, we've got a little bit of movement left. We now have a quarry, which is adding the rock to our pools. You can see those up at the top, ore, wood, mercury, crystal, and sulfur, and then gold. Also, if we click on our city here, our daily gold income is 1,000 a day. So every day we're going to make 1,000 gold. We're getting close to the end of the week. We need to think about what's going to be most beneficial for us. The fort is nice because it increases the number of military units that we can recruit in a week. Slave pens does increase our daily output. And it could increase it significantly more once we get some of these other buildings built. But I think what I really want is the Mages Guild. The Mages Guild gives us a couple of spells to throw around in the middle of combat, which can be very powerful. Our mana pool is not very large, so we got to be very careful about casting spells too frequently or we'll run out of mana and not be able to cast any. But that's worth it. And we finally grew our town by building buildings into a township, which gives us one of these three upgrades. And this is just a permanent passive bonus. So we can permanently increase our morale, increase the growth rate of creatures so we get more per week, or just our daily gold income. We're kind of hurting for gold income at the moment. I know it doesn't seem like it because we have 9,000 gold, but we want to keep our gold as high as possible so that when the next week rolls over, we have the money to immediately buy all of the military units. So I'm going to go ahead and grab that for now. And that's going to be the end of this turn. No movement, no buildings to construct in the turn. A typical game, in my experience, I've won quite a few games on this normal difficulty now. They basically go about an hour if you're playing quickly, and you'll usually be close to winning around week 4. So sometime between week 3, week 4, definitely before week 5. You will have decided whether you're going to win the game or lose the game, essentially. We're just gonna come back down here. Maybe send... Yeah, let's do this. So we had pretty good Luxon and our hero in. I'll send some shadow clones with the hero so that if they do shoot at my Gorgons, there's a good chance they're going to hit the shadows and not my actual units. Another thing to keep in mind, you do have a limited amount of units that you can field at a time, but you can have reserve units that as your units get consumed, new ones get thrown in. So you can have very, very large armies. Having multiple armies in the game is also something you can do, but they don't interact at the same time. So I can't have 2 armies attack a spot at the same time, but I can have them attack one after the other. Alright, let's go ahead and start the battle. I guess I can go ahead and do that. I wanted it to cast on the Gorgons, but it doesn't look like it's going to let me. There we go. And you can see my hero finally lost enough health to disengage. He's not dead or anything, and he'll be perfectly fine tomorrow and the next day to fight. Notice we lost 11 troglodytes in that fight, but hopefully about half of them will be recoverable. Alright, so we have some options now. Warding. This gives them... defense against large units. Or we just take more melee attack or better shadow cloning. I actually want to level up the shadow cloning. That's kind of our gimmick. Alright, we're out of movement. But 4 of these guys managed to be recovered from the 11 that we lost, so that's about 50%. Go ahead and add them back into our army. And now our army is starting to not be as strong as it was earlier on. We've lost a fair number of the units that we had at the beginning of this week, but this week is about to be over. Which means we're about to get more military units. We have access to another building here, and one of the things that I think you should always prioritize is grabbing the buildings that increase your income. This is going to increase our income by 500 per day. It's going to pay for itself in 3 days, and then we're going to start getting significantly more gold going forward. However, right before the end of a week, we need a fair amount of gold, and I don't necessarily want to spend it on that. If I can spend it on something else that's going to benefit us. Unfortunately, really like to buy this. I think I can buy this actually. Require Idol of Shadows. Okay, so we have to have this built first. So this is going to take 1, 2, 3 before we can build that. If I do that, we might be able to get these military units added to our army, but I think it's going to be too expensive. The Architect is nice because it also increases the gold per day, but it's only by 250 and it costs 2,000. So it might actually push us up above. Yeah, we're at 0 of 6 for the next town level. You can see that down here. This building counts as 4, so not a good time to build this either. So with all of that considered, I think the best thing we can maybe build is the fort, which is going to increase the number of military units we can add. So we can add a bunch of troglodytes, a fair number of gorgons, or a handful of watchers. We're mainly focusing on military units, and I think having more gorgons is going to be nice. So we're going to go ahead and do that. That's going to end our turn. Alright, we're definitely not ready for that fight, or that fight. Maybe that fight. So there's really nothing that I can get to this turn in terms of a fight or loot. That's going to make a lot of sense. So what I'm going to do instead is just head over this way and sort of scout out. Okay, walking through here will cause a fight that I'm not ready for. These imprisoned units will gladly join whatever army comes to save them. This is not showing a sword, so I'm wondering if this is not going to be a fight. Normally if you have a fight, there's a sword. Cool. So we just got 6 free Trogzerkers. Actually going to move back just a hair. And now when we end the turn, you're going to see all of these numbers and these values at the bottom are going to be reset. So what can I build? We went with Gorgons. Upgrading the Gorgons to a higher level character might be good, but it also might be too expensive for us. Upgrading the regular Trogzerker unit, though, that might be worth doing. It's going to be cheaper. It's going to give us more of them. And that won't take effect till next turn. Alright, so I'm actually going to move my hero back to town, and there's an important reason for that. I have 22 troglodytes and 21 trogzerkers, but because we upgraded our barracks into the one that produces trogzerkers, I can actually upgrade all of these guys into trogzerkers by paying a small amount. And so now you can see we have 43 of the trogzerkers. In addition to that, we have 11,000 gold. And I'm going to just go ahead and create all of these military units. Still have 4,000 gold left over, but we were able to create 15 more of those, 19 more of those, and 6 more of those. And now our army's looking pretty beefy. In addition to that, we can build another building, and this is a good time to go ahead and build this one because we're not going to be needing a big stack of gold for another week. Alright, and we can start looking at maybe getting some of these upgrades to our military units. Also, we got some spells. This is because I brought my hero back to the main town, and we had built the Mages Guild. So the Mages Guild gives your hero spells and spell power once per hero once you visit the building. But you have to come back to town if you aren't in the town when you create it. So now when I click on my hero, I have some spells. We have Frost Ring, we have our Shadow Cloning ability, we have Weakness, and we have Summon Imps. Interesting. 46 damage from Frost Ring. Decreases health greatly. Okay. And now you can see some of these fights that we were looking at before look a lot more palatable. I would like to come down here and get these magical items, so I think that's what we're going to do. And we're going to spend our turn fighting these units first. Alright, this is going to be a rampage, so we don't really need to do anything else. Let's go get some combat. And you also have a speed modifier, so if you want the fights to go a little faster, you can always activate that. Alright, we have another level. Legion's a really cool one when you have lots of military units that are small. It just adds a moderate amount of power to your military units, both health and damage. So we'll grab that. I don't quite have enough movement to grab any of this stuff on this turn, so we'll do it next turn. Okay, gold is not really an issue for us at the moment, so I'm going to take the XP. And it looks like we have more mercury than sulfur, so I'll just grab whatever I'm lower in. Let's let that poison work a little bit before we fight. And there's really no reason not to use Shadow Cloning. It's a once-a-day ability, though, so if you get in more than one fight in a single day, you won't be able to use it again. But if you're only planning on doing one fight, you might as well use it. I want to continue to level up Shadow Cloning, because it is kind of our most powerful ability at this point. Let's take a look at our hero real quick. So we have a sword, which adds +1 to our attack, and a intermediate leggings, which adds +1 hydromancy skill. So that's making this a level 2 spell now, but it costs more mana, and we don't have a lot of mana. Alright, we have moderate, and 10 of our troglodytes have died, but are recoverable. There's also a fight down here we can almost get to. Let's go ahead and move these 10 troglodytes into an army that's over here. We can recover them and then finish moving over here towards this next easy fight. Building wise, couple of choices. So we have 3 of 6. Building this architect will go ahead and give us 4 buildings, essentially, and which would make this town level 3 and give us another one of those benefits. Also, I'd like to get these guys unlocked before the next week is over. We could also go Stronghold and get Nest of Monsters next. Slave Pens still don't feel very good yet. Let's go ahead and do that. So we're now at town level 3. We have 1 of 5. So 4 more upgrades, and then this will level up our town again. Eventually we'll get another one of those passive pick 1 of 3 benefits. You'll get a couple of those throughout the game. We also have the teleport. This allows us to teleport our hero and the army directly to our town. It does have a 7-day cooldown, but it is something you can do. I would imagine that's definitely handy on bigger maps. Alright, so again, we'll just start this battle. We have overwhelming force. Cast our shadows. And we're going at ×2 speed now. Alright. We lost a few military units, but not too bad. What is this? The Trog Hovel. Oh, this is good. So, this building will produce a small number of Trogs for us every week. So we should definitely try to take that one over. Now, if I fight this fight now, we're still in the same day, and I already used my shadow ability. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just move right to there. Also, some of our military units were recovered, so we should send them down here, and they should be able to participate in this fight next turn as well. Finally, always check to make sure that you have built the next building. We can get Shadowmancers. They're pretty expensive though, so you can see the shade of this color isn't the light tan, so we can't build these. We're short on money. The best way to get money is to build these. This gives you more money per day, so it will take a couple of days to get there, but I like to prioritize any of the buildings that give you money whenever you don't have something better to build. Alright. And that ends our turn. Alright, so these guys should be able to join them. Now my Shadowmancy ability is back up and available. And this is going to be a harder fight. You can see there are more units. 20 to 40 Trogs, 10 to 20 of the bigger Trogs, and 1 to 5 of these look like some kind of cavalry unit. So this is our first siege battle. So there's actually a wall here, and we're going to get attacked by these towers. You can't actually interact with these as far as I can tell, and that means that your units have to break down or climb over the walls in order to get into combat with these units on the other side of the wall. While that's happening, they're going to take damage, but there are some spells and other things that you can do to make that a little bit easier. What really is helpful is if you sort of overwhelm one section of the wall and knock it down really fast and get into combat. So we're going to try doing that. And go ahead and get my shadows up. Okay, so we've got some imps that I can summon on the other side of the wall. Or I can cast weakness, or I can cast frost. If we cast this Frost attack over here, we can do a fair amount of damage to these units down here. I think we're going to hit the most units right there. Generally, spells won't affect your own units. They'll only affect the enemy units, and they'll be highlighted with the little white circles there. So cast Frost on them. That should get us into the fight a little bit easier. And I actually do have the ability to cast another spell. We have 9 more mana. We could cast Weaken down here, or I could cast just some little military units, some demons to sort of tie these units up for a second while my main army starts to move in here. There we go. And we win. We did take some losses, but not a ton. Alright. So now we have some new abilities. Swarming creates phantom duplicates of some of the creatures in the hero's army, 15% per rank for weak creatures, and is lower for more powerful creatures. Slightly lower for ranged creatures as well. This just creates more enemies for or more units for the enemies to deal with. I actually like this idea a lot, so we're just going to have like this massive number of shadows and clones. And we'll just kind of go with a swarming army. This will get us a sulfur mill if we can win that fight. And as we're approaching an hour here, you can see that I'm at the almost through week 2, but we can move rather quickly when we're ready to. So as you get more experience with this game and doing some of these tasks that you need to do every week, you can see how the game can be played really quickly. We have more money. I think I want to go this way so we can get these guys. So I'm going to pick up this building next. This allows us to perform a ritual, which will make some of your enemies paralyzed by shadows during the next battle. If used against an enemy hero, the hero will pay a small price of their power. Alright, so this should give us this next turn. And now we can either have more ranged units. These are casters and ranged attackers, or we could get minotaurs. And I want more melee units because we have a melee. That shadow clone ability is like a melee thing, so. Or not the shadow clone, the other one that we picked. Summon shadows. Shadows are waiting. Alright. Because we got this building, we start with them, so I can go ahead and get these guys. And we can move them into the army. Alright, so they have a lot of units. More than I thought. So this is going to be trickier than I thought. We don't have any units in reserve. We're really going to have to use our spells wisely. Unfortunately, I don't know how much mana I have left. So this might be a little difficult. I do have my shadow cloning. I'm hoping that the shadow ability goes off. It doesn't look like I have any ranged units, and I can use Weaken. Yeah, I can use Weaken on their golems, maybe. Okay. combat here. Yeah, I have enough to cast Weaken one time, so we'll cast it on these golems. Hopefully that's enough. I'm trying to get my range units to attack the golems now that they're weak. Yeah, I think we got this in the bag now. Not too many casualties. Let's go ahead and boost this, since we are really focusing on melee attackers and make them even stronger. Now we have most of our base resources coming in. We actually only have what looks like a couple buildings left in our territory before we start conquering outside of our territory. So buildings that we can build, can't quite afford that yet. In fact, can't quite afford a lot of these things, but I could. Oh, we already built this turn. Never mind. We can recover these units real quick. Alright, so up here you can see there's a random roaming army. You'll usually have one of these in your territory, and it's sort of a random faction that just roams around. If you take them out, they don't really do anything but sort of block your path in some situations. They rarely, if ever, attack you. I've never really seen them attack you. They'll just kind of wander around. But if you defeat them, they usually have some pretty good loot, and specifically their hero has like some magical items that you can pick up, so it's a good way to get some equipment for your hero. Unfortunately, this is taking a little bit longer than I wanted to, because I'm explaining a little bit and not moving quite as quickly as I do when I play off camera. But either way, you can sort of see that you could very easily get this game finished in about an hour. We're almost finished clearing our territory, then we're going to move up here to the enemy's territory, and as soon as we take their town and wipe out all their armies, that's pretty much the end of the game. So I'm going to go ahead and end the video here, but before I do, I want to just talk a little bit about why I like this game so much. It executes very, very well on a very simple idea. And it simplifies a lot of things, but still adds enough depth to keep the game entertaining. One of the things that I really love about this game is the combat, how it's quick-paced. You still get to make logistical and tactical decisions in the middle of the combat. And it does allow for what I would presume could be a very fast multiplayer experience if you did play a normal 4X game with a similar style of combat. I really like the idea of it. That being said, the multiplayer in this game, it appears that there's no netcode for actual multiplayer, but you can do hot seat streaming of the game, where anybody can play with you. You take turns, and as long as they have like a controller or keyboard that you can link to, you can play through the Steam. I can't remember exactly what it's called, but it's the Steam streaming service where they stream the game to the other players, and their inputs, with very little lag for a game like this, allow them to play with you. So only one person needs to own the game in order to play this in multiplayer, but it isn't quite the multiplayer experience I would hope for. I would like to see a real multiplayer experience with real netcode, where if both players own the game, they can play in that mode, but the streaming hot seat mode is still available. That would be cool. That's one little check mark against the game, I suppose. But for the most part, it's just a quick way to kill 30 minutes to an hour Obviously, the bigger the map and the more enemies, the longer the game's going to take, but it's still very, very fast-paced, very quick. Um, and I like it a lot. I think it's a cool game. I think you guys might enjoy it, so I wanted to showcase it here. Special thanks to Splattercat. If you're not familiar with Splattercat Gaming, his YouTube channel is pretty awesome. If you have ever watched an old WTF video by Total Biscuit, I would say he is probably the best person to do that type of video since Total Biscuit did them, where he just takes a 30-minute to an hour look at various indie games, gives his take on them, shows you some of the mechanics of the game, and just helps get them out into the public awareness. He's the first person that showcased this game that I ever saw, and I was really intrigued by it. Followed it for 6 months to a year. Once it came out of early access, I picked it up right away, and like I said, I've put a little over, I think I'm pushing almost 20 hours in the game now. I've learned a lot of the mechanics of the game just through simple playing, and it's a lot of fun. And I think if my audience were to be exposed to it, they would probably enjoy it as well. So please take a look at Heroes Hour if you haven't already. It's not a very deep, not a very complex game, but it can be a lot of fun if you're in the mood for something casual, or maybe want to just play something with your friends, or play around with the map editor and sort of create your own experience. There's a lot of optimization that you can do with those menus I showed you at the beginning. So that being said, this has been the Nose Plays, and check out Heroes Hour. You guys have a great day.